fair break in the media, do you? Plus, we have these citizen reporters who have these videos of these events, which are quite different than what we get a lot of times from the media, which seems to be sort of censoring the violence. No?
Absolutely, they're their narrative. They are projecting a narrative. When the word narrative came into currency, I knew we were in trouble, because the word narrative really suggests that there's no objective truth. There's no real story of what happened. It's just everyone has their own narrative. And you get to then, the press can justify presenting a story that doesn't really correspond to objective truth, but it's our narrative. We have a narrative, you have a narrative. I've been appalled at what's on this violence, because it's happening right out in the streets. Anyone with eyes can see what's happening. They see the violence. They see these groups of agitators in their black outfits, and their helmets and their shields, which incidentally have hammer and sickle on them most of the time, rushing the police, causing violence, throwing rocks, people showing up with the rocks and the frozen bottles. That's happening. That's happening in front of people. You don't see it on any of the national news. You don't see it on the networks. You don't see it on the other cable stations. And yet you hear about these peaceful demonstrators. So it's a lie. The American people are being told a lie by the media.
Or maybe you'll see it rarely, so they can cover themselves and say, see that? But if you don't look fast, you miss it. But you're exactly right. I find the best coverage right now are these brave citizen reporters who go in there with their iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them get their brains beaten out. They get horribly beaten. And sometimes you'll have situations where the mayor has told the police to stand down and they're getting beaten. And nobody's there to defend them. And it's an amazing thing to watch the media here. You would think the media would be defending even citizen reporters with their iPhones and so forth, but they're not. Do you think the media, and I've written about this myself, but do you think the media has become so ideological that it's just utterly unreliable, particularly some of these cable shows?
Well, it's reliable. It's reliable for being partisan nowadays, I think. As you and I know, the First Amendment applied to every individual citizen. This was the day of the pamphlet, and everyone's speech is the same. What we're talking here about corporations that are in the media business, and there are a few of them, and they all pretty much toe the party line. The difference in content in terms of the news reporting is all the same. I like it when Fox goes through some of the reporting of each channel, how they use exactly the same phraseology and same talking points, and that's what you see. It's become extremely monolithic, and it's wedded in many ways to the Democratic Party. It's a partisan press largely.
There's a recent serious research study a couple of professors put out, I think this week, maybe last week, University of Illinois, that undergirds your point. They say there are these bubbles and these micro bubbles. So tiny is the circle that some of these media folks live in, they have no conception about what's going on out there. For instance, I don't see most of the hosts who are commenting on what's going on in Portland. If you're a news person, I would think well, we have a correspondent. No, but you're commenting on it all the time. And not as an opinion person, but as a news person. And then you say it's mostly peaceful. What does that mean? That means in some cases it's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a minority, a number of situations where it's not mostly peaceful. That makes it extremely dangerous. So even the language is kind of odd as far as I'm concerned.
Take the recent example of us trying to address the upsurge in violent crime that has come along with the demonization of police forces. We've seen throughout the city, the major cities, a surge in crime and many, many black deaths as a result. Those black deaths don't seem to matter as much to the people who are proclaiming Black Lives Matter. I believe Black Lives Matter, but I believe all Black lives matter. And I also believe that it's not just a matter of protecting their safety from physical harm. It's also providing economic opportunity, which this administration has done it's also giving them a meaningful education that allows them to seize that opportunity. I think there is systemic racism in this country, but I think the best example of systemic racism that I'm talking about is the educational system, which has relegated our inner city children to schools that are failing and fail them. And the president, as you know, is for school choice, to give put the buying power into the parents of the hands of every inner city kid so they can pick their education. And safety on the street. You can't have, community life and economic progress without safety. These are the things that we should be providing to the inner city holistically. But the media recently has looked at our efforts to bring some justice to the streets of these communities that are suffering the violence, and then they equate that with what they refer to as jackbooted federal agents going in to crush protesters. They don't, it's either an amazing lack of understanding of what's happening around them, or it's deliberate.
And they don't live there, and they don't send their kids there, and they don't shop there.
They buy their way out of every inconvenience.